going to pick just a shadow color that I've already established and roll it down. And I'm going to go down further with it. Bring this down and almost make a triangle that meets right here. I'm going to overlap. That's one thing you can do is you're kind of creating anatomy from based on what's there, but you're using what's there and building on it. And you have to consider light and shadow if you're rendering in that manner. I mean, I'm going to have to make the ball of his nose bigger. So I'm going to grab this peach color that I already chose. I want it to be a little less saturated right here. And I want to make the ball of his nose a little bigger. He's got this great ridge right there, and then it goes up into here. So now you can see I've expanded his nose quite a bit. When I take away the painting, look at that. His nose goes from that point to this big ball. Now the drawing was good. It's very angular, but I wanted to change it a little bit. I wanted to improve on the likeness and change the angle of his face a little. So there's his nose I'm establishing. Don't want to get too close there. I'm going to continue to paint this area. I'm going to lighten that up just a little bit. Right here, and I want to define this ridge. There we go. I want to soften this a little bit and take away the saturation. I've noticed, and Court Jones, my friend, taught me this. I'm going to mention a lot of friends over and over on these podcasts. It's something that I'm familiar with, and I learn a lot of sage advice from them. They may not be the ones that came up with these sayings or these pieces of advice, but they're the ones that I heard it from, so they're the only ones I can give credit to. And if you said something that I'm repeating and I'm saying, oh, Dion said this, or Steve said this, if you know that you said it first, or you know who said it first, you can feel free to write in and let me know about it. I can always correct my verbiage or my choice of who said what. But for now, I'm not giving anyone direct credit, just giving credit to the people that talk to me. But Court used to talk about saturation, right as it comes along this edge, right here. Where an edge folds from light to dark, where that recedes, you're going to see the most saturated colors. So I'm going to go ahead and desaturate around it just a little bit, right here. Maybe get some reflected light, and then resaturate right around the edge of the shadow. So it recedes down, and then it gets really bright, and then or really not really bright, really saturated, and then it kind of goes back into whatever reflected light is being picked up there. So that kind of little bit of information, it can help you when you're creating anatomy based on what's there. I'm drawing Tom Cruise. I'm drawing from a reference, but his nose is not what I'm doing exactly. I've created a new identity for his nose, and I want that to be consistent with the drawing, with life, with how the light reacts to him. So you can see I've established this sort of interesting ball on his nose, a little square area, and it recedes under here. And I'm going to extend this light just a little bit down here. And now I want to paint in his nostril. He's got kind of a big nostril, but I don't want to be dominant with it. I'm going to pull this color down and let this slide into that area. Once again, whoever knows the name of this area, let me know. I know the people who know all the facial features and all the names are gonna be kind of annoyed with me on that, but no offense. I just didn't really take the time to learn all of it. I just study it. I just look at it. Now I'm going to pick one of my darkest colors. I'm just going to grab it actually right off of here. Nice saturated brown, saturated red, really dark. And I'm going to establish this line again. You can see I had a nice straight line. I like that. I want to keep that right there. I might get a little darker and a little more saturated with that. There we go. Just to establish that. And I don't want to get too dark with it over here. Create this little shadow. And then I want this to dip around. Now I'm just painting. The color isn't that great of a choice, but I'll fix that in a second. And curl up in. And I want this shadow to be established. There we go. So now I've got what I want. But now, since this is bigger, I want the shadow to be bigger. The cast shadow. This harsh shadow right here. I like the curl of his lip. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose to play with the size and not the depth, or not the vertical orientation of shadow. So I'm going to use a saturated brown color, paint in this area, make it a little darker. I'm going to pull an orangey color over here, paint this in. I'm going to saturate this a little bit more. Nice and red and rosy nose. There we go. There we go. I like that. And the same thing right here, nice and saturated. It also has to do with where the blood vessels are, the capillaries under the skin. That has quite a bit to do with it. His nose is going to be more pink. It's going to be more glowing than the rest of his face, so I can bring that a little more towards red and saturate it a little more. And maybe have some fun with how pink his nose is. Don't want to get too saturated. There we go. There we go. I got a nice pink going on there. And his nose is thick. I like to say his nose is thumpy. I don't know why. That's one word that stands out as a good description. My friend Nate always says good caricatures make noises. I think also good features, you can come up with your own term, or good description. It's like an onomatopoeia or hyperbole. You come up with words that aren't necessarily real, but they really represent something well. So I'm going to paint this in. I want the shadow to be a bit deeper, a little darker down here. But I also want reflected light, so I'm going to make it a little darker. Pull it up in there. It's going to get really dark as it goes up into his nostril. And I like how wide it gets there. But I don't want it to get too dark. I want some reflected light, a little bit of seeing through there. And I'm going to pull that out a little. Don't want to make it too dark. Got to be careful. There we go. So now I'm also defining this little rim right there. Alright, now I'm going to get darker with that edge so it doesn't look too washed out, and define this edge a little bit. There we go. Now I've got sort of his nose indicated there. I really enjoy Tom Cruise's nose. Gotta love that. And I'm going to saturate this area, the shadow right there, a little bit. So I just want to bring that up and make sure that doesn't blur into the too dark of a line. Now, one thing that you can will really help this also sell this nose is some reflected light. Reflected light's not going to be as saturated because it's coming off of his beard, it's coming off of his teeth, it's coming off of the ground. It's not going to be quite as saturated as the shadow edge areas. So I can take this kind of color. I've got this nice saturated edge right there. See that? It's nice and pretty. Now I'm going to take that and I'm going to find out where it's folding up the most. This is a hardish ridge right here that I just bumped up a little bit. So I want to take that and I want to desaturate it a little bit and lighten it just a tad. And then I'm going to put it right here. And that helps sell the dimensionality of the nose. Down here as well. Maybe make it a little lighter. Then it feels like those teeth are reflecting off there a little bit. There we go. So I kind of like that. May have lost a little bit of the saturation too much here, so I'll throw that back in there. And dip this down in. There, I kind of like that Tom Cruise nose. So I work that up a little bit. Now I'll work on his eye a little bit. Help sure up the likeness, because there's a lot that goes on with the eyes that are important, and that is probably one of the stronger areas of likeness. He's got this nice dip that goes in towards his nose. This reference doesn't show it quite as much as this one does, so I'm going to grab some color here, darken it a little bit, and I'm going to sort of trace, sort of draw, not trace, draw it out rather than paint it. Painting and drawing can be very related, very similar, but I see the approach. Your mindset has to be devoted to one or the other, or it can be jumping back and forth, but you have to at least recognize what the feeling and the difference is of the two.